everyone, it's Professor Greta Kishbaugh. Thank you for tuning in to the Biz Dynamics Academy Management and Leadership Review podcast. This week I'm going to delve into the reason why I started the podcast last year, and that is to review management and leadership trends. And that could be shared for professors or instructors that need some ideas, or students, anyone who wants to get a little more information on what we're talking about in leadership and management today. Just this past January, I had the opportunity to read in its entirety Dare to Lead, a book by Brené Brown, based on her research that she's been doing with Fortune 10 companies, her own personal human resource experience, and her PhD research that she's done with these organizations to give us a really good idea on what we're expected to do as leaders and what we truly are doing as leaders. In our community, I'm fortunate enough to know Liz Wooten-Reschke, a friend and colleague for over 10 years, who now has a very thriving business, Connect for More. Liz is a certified board governance trainer, and she has built Connect for More into a resource for board leaders, staff members, community leaders who all have an interest in growing their nonprofit organization. So it's been a pleasure to talk to her. She's just an amazing woman, and I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to her because she recently went through an accredited program to become a Dare to Lead facilitator.
Hi, it's Professor Greta Kishbaugh here, and I am lucky to have Liz Wooten-Reschke, and she has all kinds of distinctions after her name. I'll let her tell them to you. And I met Liz probably it's been about 9 or 10 years ago, and she was doing work with the Nonprofit Leadership Center, and she decided to branch out into her own, I believe it was a consultant type business where she got other nonprofit consultants together, and since then has morphed into an amazing company, and it's Connect for More. So Liz, welcome today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Connect for More, and welcome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me and having me here. I think we have to check our math. I feel like it's over 10 years now.
Okay, good. Other, but even better.
Yeah. So as far as Connect for More, it started off as a solopreneurship. So I was on my own and deciding to consult, and I've been doing so almost 11 years now. And it's now morphed into a kind of hybrid of employees and subcontractors. And we have a team of about 15. And our purpose really is a for-profit, primarily serving the nonprofit sector. So our focus is to impact lives and organizations, to equip our community, to help others and society by providing thought leadership, fostering change, and then also providing resources that help people accomplish their mission work.
Okay, excellent. And why, just to get for everybody to get to know you a little bit, why nonprofit? Why did you branch out to help nonprofit people?
Well, great question. I actually started off my professional career as a public school teacher and was in the public school teacher system in Florida for several years. Came from a long line of educators, but I also had the ability through my family to be connected in a way through our service. So I really can't ever remember a time that we weren't providing some sort of community service as a family, one way or the other, whether it was through our local Lions Club down in the Keys, whether it was through our service clubs in high school. We've just always had an opportunity in our family to provide and serve. And so it was a natural fit. As I got into graduate school, I really started to volunteer more intentionally at the professional level with nonprofits and just got really excited about the impact that could be had, the services that are provided, and quite frankly, just the depth and breadth of the sector was fascinating to me.
Okay, fantastic. And basically, just so those of you who know me know that I teach college students management and leadership. And lately, I've been looking at new authors and new leadership ideas, and I really focus on those that are doing the research in the field. And just recently, Liz completed certification for the Dare to Lead program by Brené Brown. So tell me a little bit about how that came about, Liz.
Sure. Well, I have been a fan of Brené Brown for probably the last 5 or 6 years. And so the opportunity came for Dare to Lead to come out, and I bought the book right away. I think I had it on pre-order and went onto her website and saw that she was hosting a Facilitator application. And coincidentally, it was my firstborn's birthday, was the application deadline. So I thought that was a little bit of a sign, hustled a little bit to get it done, and then applied for the program. Now for Brene, I actually came to know her, I won't even say personally. I would fangirl a million times over for Brene in person, but had the opportunity to interact with her over the summer as part of the Facilitator program. And I'm one of 700 in the world that is facilitated to dare to lead facilitation. And really what that means is it's a culmination of many of her books and her 20 plus years of research to bring together courageous leaders in all sectors. And so for me in particular, with my background in nonprofit and education, was just super excited to say, how can we take these principles and translate them, not just to my home base in Tampa, Florida, but also to the greater nonprofit sector, and especially for those that work with the nonprofit sector, like many of myself as consultant and many of my colleagues.
Yeah, because if people know who Brene Brown is, they know that a lot of her research was done with huge corporate, the top Fortune 10. And this is interesting to see this. And that's why I have you here today, because my students are always asking me questions with the whole pandemic that's coming up, that's going on right now. And as leaders now come back, and we keep talking about this in crisis management, and as leaders come back now to their organizations, they're going to need to make changes, and we talked about that, and they're going to need to get buy-in. So what I would like to ask you today is to give everybody an idea of what, first of all, tell me about courage. What does she mean by courage? She continues to talk about courage. Can you tell us a little bit about courage?
Absolutely. Well, and those of you who know Brene know that she's got a few what she calls affects that she talks about in pretty good frequency. And so one of them is leadership, one of them is wholeheartedness, and another one is courage. And so when she talks about courage, it is that concept of integrity, being that if we are going to, live in our integrity, that we're going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable, and we're going to have to choose courage instead of comfort. And that means sometimes speaking up for others. It means speaking up for ourselves. And sometimes that also means rumbling with the concepts of vulnerability. And it really, from that concept, is an opportunity for us to say, I choose courage, that courage is a choice, and that it's not always the easiest choice. But in order for us to live in our integrity as professionals and, quite frankly, as persons and human beings, that we often have to choose to be leaders, to step into discomfort, to rumble with vulnerability, and really live our values to be able to make sure that we are kind of building on that set of courage.
Okay, fantastic. And then another thing I'll bring up real quick here. Now, we're hoping that leaders and managers come back from all this and have the courage, I guess we can say, to start these tough conversations. So can you tell me what Brene means by dealing with or starting a tough conversation?
Sure. So when she talks about skill set, what I love about courage is that really it's a teachable skill set. So we already mentioned the rumbling with vulnerability, which is, if you've read the book or heard her TED Talk or heard the Netflix special, that she talks about rumbling with vulnerability being the biggest piece of us kind of being daring leaders. And the other components really are living into our values, being more than just, professions on a wall, that we actually are putting our integrity into action and putting some of those things. The other components that I think really address your question, those are that braving trust aspect, where we take trust and we build it over time through our boundary setting, through our responsibility, through accountability, through providing generosity to others. But I think what you're referencing too, Greta, is the opportunity for us learning to rise. I mean, we're not just now returning to work. We're going to have to return to work after this, pandemic, new normal, pivoting opportunity, whatever the verbiage is.
Uncharted territory we're in now.
Unprecedented, uncharted, words. It's just an opportunity for us to figure out how we rise and what we're going to do with this situation. And so the learning to rise does have to do with the rumbling with vulnerability piece as well, because in order to learn to rise, you have to be able to lean into those tough conversations. And so when we do some of these facilitations with folks, even when they're not Dare to Lead facilitations, we talk a lot about how many of you like conflict? How many of you like tough conversations?
Nobody.
There are very few people
Right.
in a room full of adults that will say that they enjoy. I mean, there's usually at least one or two that'll raise their hand just for fun. But, I think many of us shy away from conflict, and many of us shy away from tough conversations. And some of the work that Brene shared in her book called Braving the Wilderness was about leaning into conflict to help it transform us. And so from that concept of conflict, we have to be willing to face it. We have to be willing to lean into it, because if those tough conversations don't happen, then we automatically are limiting our ability for innovation. We are limiting our ability to be creative. We don't hold each other accountable, or we don't perform in an adaptability and evolutionary way. And we just don't provide each other opportunity for feedback and problem solving. And so it's, resilience and kind of this whole concept of resetting is exactly where we are right now, is we are hoping for, and in many cases praying for, resilience. We are hoping for a reset. But we've had this great pause button pressed for at least a couple months here now in Florida, and for a few more months still for many of us. And
so let's talk about that. So this whole idea maybe of a reset, like a reset button, kind of, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's
like, okay.
And I know you and I are in the same age demographic, and it's funny because I think about like the old Nintendo, right? Like, oh, I messed it up on Duck Hunt, and I'd be like, reset.
Yep.
We don't get to do that, right? Like, we don't get to do that now. We're going to have to go back into the workforce and really have a tough conversation about what has happened and how we're feeling, and how many of us prior to have had a real conversation with our workplace about, like, this is how I'm feeling. I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling scared. I'm broke. I'm angry. But thank you. I'm so glad to be around people again. I mean, like, it's that one-handed of like, I'm happy to be out of pajama pants.
Yeah, but
I'm not happy that I had to take 15% cut on my pay, so I didn't lose my job. I mean, it's got to be a lot of the hope for resetting, but there is no reset button on what has happened. Right. And we still don't know kind of the long-term effects and impact of vaccinations and social distancing and all data. That. So there's a lot of unsurety and uncertainty right now that it's scary as hell. Yep, there's no sugarcoating it. It's scary.
And we just preach in management class that good managers are good leaders. I continue to talk about that in all my classes. My students are sick of hearing about it. But we pull up the servant leadership chart, and it's like empathy and things like that, and things that people really couldn't empathize with. Sorry for the pun, but things that we really couldn't think about. And now I think there's a different mindset. So that's what I'm hoping comes out of all this, is not just for managers and leaders, but also for subordinates. That mindset adjustment that we all are going through this, and there's this opportunity then for having these real conversations and being honest. And really getting out the things that were frustrating, what worked, what didn't work, and hopefully moving on, hopefully learning from this and moving on from that. And like Brene and you, in your facilitation, having these tough conversations and being brave enough to make change, moving forward. I hope that we learn something from that. So
I do too. I mean, I am hopeful. Most days I am hopeful of the human race that we will have the opportunity to, and forgive the verbiage on this too, but rise strong in this occasion. And as
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Yeah. Rising from this. It's rising from strong from this, and staying strong, and good leadership qualities that we talk about all the time. And now we can put them to action. And that's what I'm hoping. So,
well, I love the opportunity that Brene provides as far as some of her quotables, right? And so exactly what you're talking about as daring leaders, it's those who live into their values and who are never silent about hard things.
I think that's true in some of the books that we talk about and I promote to my students. I ask them, what makes the best leaders of these organizations? And it's the ones that, can focus on the core value. And maybe now core values, I don't know how many times I've seen courage on that, but now it's going to be on there. Now you're going to see courage and resilience and integrity, and they're actually going to mean something to somebody now. That's what I'm most excited about. They actually will resonate with people now. And those that were not normally, well, yeah, that's a leader, or yeah, that'll never be me, or that'll never be this. I think we all have the opportunity now to step into leadership positions and really make a difference. And that might sound kind of cliched, but
No, I agree. I think most opportunities are roughed with challenges and possibilities. And this in particular, from her research, Renee has been able to define a leader as anybody who wants to encourage the empowerment of someone else to make a difference. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but you don't have to be a manager to be a leader. You don't have to be a supervisor to be a leader. That there is courage going on, and good, bad, or indifferent. That is one of the things I appreciate most about the pandemic is the display and the thirst for courage and action from our frontline workers, from our service providers, from our restaurant staff, there's just an amazing amount of humanity that is out there right now. And it does give me hope, and it gives me courage that when it is time for us to reset officially, when it is time for us to kind of rise strong together, that we will do so together, and we will be willing. We may come back all in pajama pants and yoga.
We might tell our boss, I saved a lot of money on gas. Can I work from home? Can
yes.
I?
The system is going to change, and that I think
it definitely will.
I think is a lesson for us as well, because that even from the nonprofit sector we've heard as well.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you before we close here, do you have any? And I don't talk a lot about nonprofits necessarily in class. We spend a lot more time on the large organizations, but is there some advice you can give for nonprofits, just in 50 words or less, for nonprofit leaders now that when they reopen their charities and their organizations? You have a couple of words of wisdom for them at this point, and it might change next week.
Like everything else. I think one of the biggest things, and I and other colleagues have said this for years, is that you are a nonprofit business, and you are meant to be a business. You are a heart-centric business, and you are meant to engage many more stakeholders in many ways than a for-profit. But it is still important that we are making important business decisions for our nonprofit work. And so sometimes that means canceling cultural arts season. Sometimes that means that we're having to furlough employees. That definitely means that we're communicating with our board of directors and engaging them and inviting them to help sustain us in ways that they may never have been asked to do. But it's an opportunity for connection. And so I hope that our sector uses this as an opportunity to keep the strategy going, keep focused on the business, and then also use this as an opportunity to connect with our board, with our staff, with our volunteers, and with our donors.
Yeah, our donors are going to have to learn how to use Zoom.
I've heard some really cool stories about that.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I can say that because I personally do work part-time for a nonprofit, and it has affected me. We've been closed. So, but I remember we had to put together a whole social campaign because we have donors who check Facebook and donors who don't check Facebook. So we're doing a whole marketing thing, but that's another subject. So, okay. So Liz, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say about Connect for More? Here's your opportunity to tell us what's coming up, or what do you guys have planned, and you can take us out.
Absolutely. Well, again, we stay connected as a virtual business, but we are just holding space for folks as needed. So if you are a philanthropist, if you're somebody who's interested in the nonprofit sector and want to learn a little bit more, we have great research on our website on the sector and various resources for that. We also have a great book reading list as well. If you're finding yourself with a little bit more time on your hand these days, we have that opportunity under our Goodreads section. And then ultimately just, have an opportunity to connect with us on social, because we have an amazing team putting out resources for working parents, for philanthropists, showcasing some of the best with the nonprofit sector. And at the same time, highlighting self-care and mental health as a really important part of our reset. So, yeah. Just
Yeah,
great to
I want to tell my listeners that, Liz has put together this whole, when everything was coming down, even before things were happening, Liz had put together a self-care, some self-care ideas, and I was lucky enough to listen to one of the calls, and that's been a very big help too. So, well, thank you, Liz, for being my guest today, and we'll roll up again as we get, closer, as things start to maybe either ramp up or ramp down. Maybe I'll have you back on again to talk a little bit more about the changes in work environments and how nonprofits, I'd like to really see how they come out of this and what changes they make as a result of everything that's happening. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
Thank you for tuning into the podcast. Future episodes will focus on management and leadership, books, and authors, and we'll continue on our series for transitioning to online teaching as we continue through the process of learning and working from home. Have a great day.